2, 1, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the In Full Swing podcast with me, Conor McGilligan, and I have a special guest with me today, Mr. Football, Mr. Championship, knowledgeable, whatever you want to call yourself, Benjamin. The streams on Benjamin's channel are absolutely brilliant. I'm a subscriber myself. Please go check that out. His link will be in the description below. But we are here to talk about the Championship, and we are going to be touching on the playoff picture, the relegation scenario, and as we've just been talking about off air, Nottingham Forest and their complete demise on the last day of the season. Benjamin, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm just trying to figure, Mr. Championship, does that mean I'm kind of broken, full of corruption, with wealth disparities everywhere, and I just can't get my act together? But no, yes. Needless to say, there is a lot to talk about, and we take no joy in the Forest collapse. But my God, how on earth did that happen? Jesus.
Yeah, that was something pretty spectacular, wasn't it? Something pretty not in a positive way for Nottingham Forest fans. I can see already there's a comment here from Owen Armitage saying, I'm absolutely gutted about Forest. I can completely understand that, buddy. But I think probably the best way to start, Benjamin, would be to touch on the Championship team of the season, which I know you've seen me sort of like tweet about. I'll get it on the screen now. So team of the season, Rodak in net, Ayling, Hutchinson, Morrison, probably the two surprises there. Joe Bryan left back, which, you know, I guess a lot of people would have put in there. Ayew Pereira, Eze Benrahma, pretty strong midfield there, and Watkins and Mitrovic up front. Benjamin, I'll start with you, my friend. What is your take on the Championship team of the season?
In the main, I think that pretty much meets most of our eye tests, doesn't it? Look, with the team of the season things, it's just people do it on their own criteria. They get very emotional about the players from their own teams that don't get included. We have to preface all of this by saying it's just a bit of fun, and more often than not, I mean, I think the biggest flag that you can wave for Leeds fans is I only had 2 Leeds players in my team of the year, which I think says, oh, well, there's no stars. It's all about the pattern of play, and it's a system that works beautifully, which is arguably a much better way to win football matches than just have, you know, really good individuals, isn't it? But no, I didn't have Joe Bryan. I just think from a defensive point of view, I know he's got 6 assists for Mitrovic, hasn't he? But I couldn't squeeze Eze into mine either, despite his disgusting goal on the last day of the season. Just what a player he is. And I didn't go with Rodak in goal either. Do you want to just hear my team?
Yeah, fire away, Benjamin. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I went with Raya for Brentford just on the basis that I want my team to play out from the back. And he's probably, in terms of shot stopping and distribution, in terms of people who've played over 20, 25 games before you give me Meslier.
I'd go with Raya as well. I think it's a good shout.
Okay. I went with Robinson from Wigan on the left back just to get some diversity in the team. And I think Wigan needs some representation for their ridiculous form as well. I went for Hector and White as the centre-backs. I went for Cash of Forest just for doing a really good job of coming back from midfield to be in there. Where I got most criticism was I went for Phillips and Swift in central midfield, and people said that was unbalanced and maybe Samba Sow or a Harrison Reed next to Calvin Phillips. Not that Calvin Phillips needs anybody next to him to help him out, but
he doesn't need a double pivot. He can do it himself.
Well, and this is the other thing as well, where I did 4-2-3-1, which then completely negates Costa and Harrison, doesn't it, from your Leeds point of view? So yeah. I went for, obviously Benrahma's ridiculous, so he had to be in, and on the basis that Eze played most of the season front left, I couldn't put Eze in because I'm trying to do this properly. I went for Pereira in the 10 position, and then just to balance it out, so I didn't have 3 ponies there, show ponies, I went for Jed Wallace down the right. And again, I just wanted to get a Wigan player and a Millwall player in, so we got a bit of diversity. And then I think everyone went for Mitrovic up top, didn't they? I had Bielsa manager. My subs were Samba, Ayling, Pedersen, Pinnock, Bellingham, Ayew, Eze, Hernandez, and Watkins. So
a weak team then. A weak team.
That was my team. But you know what it's like. Of course, you get I can see comments coming in. Wouldn't go for Hector. Don't rate him at all. It's all a matter of opinion and all a bit of fun. What I will say is look at or watch Fulham pre-Hector and watch Fulham post-Hector, and their defence was a lot more solid. Who would you have had in yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go with this. It was a similar shout, and do you know what, Ben? I'm not going to turn around and say we should have had 6 or 7 players in there because I completely agree with what you're saying. Leeds United, coming from a bias standpoint, don't know what would be biased here at all, by the way. But we're a unit and we're a team, and we'll get on to sort of the promoted two in a second. But and that's been the premise of Bielsa's side. It is being the unit. We're talking only the other day with a couple of lads on this podcast yesterday, and I can't remember when there's been a championship striker in terms of Patrick Bamford, who's probably scored less than 20 goals and actually won the league. Look at Timu Pukki for Norwich last year, 30 odd goals. I remember when Newcastle went up and you had Mitro, you had Dwight Gale, and it's that for me is the biggest example of why Leeds have been a unit. And I think that is why I completely agree with you. If I was to say individual quality wise, I mean, I've got a few names that I would throw at you. Obviously, you've mentioned Matty Cash. I would agree with that at right back, definitely. I was actually surprised that Luke Ayling got in there. I mean, I would say this season, I think Dallas he's got our player of the year this season. So I think Dallas would have been a good shout at left back, but naturally he isn't a left-sided player. But I mean, I think he's got something like 6 assists and 3 goals. So statistic wise, he's actually probably better than Joe Bryan. Obviously, like you mentioned, Calvin Phillips, Ben White, and I think Ben White. I'm just those 3 Leeds players. I would leave it, and I would actually take Ayling out. But Ben White, as soon as he's come into this Leeds, the Leeds out.
White were no-brainers, weren't they?
Yeah, and I think Ben White, he's come in this year. Benjamin and Leeds were defensively susceptible. Really, when we lost Pontus Jansson, we thought this Ben White was going to come in as a backup, really, and he's got 22 clean sheets alongside.
I was at the first game. I did Bristol City Leeds, and I didn't know anything about Ben White. And you guys can check me on this because I did my match review and straight in there. And I know a lot of players, don't even get picked under a Bielsa management regime for 2 or 3 months, don't they? And straight in there, absolutely perfect. So I saw him for about 30 minutes, and I was like, okay, that'll be fine. You'll be right.
Yeah, he was
banking that money for Pontus and doing a loan to replace him to take that liability. And the Jack Clark deal turns out to be complete idiot if it means you keep hold of Phillips, and they've definitely got the thick end of that deal as well, haven't they? So
definitely. I mean, you look at just obviously we just touched on Leeds there a sec, Benjamin, but you look over the 2 years as well, and with player sales, I think we've earned something like 49 million. So the output has actually sort of been equalised, and it's balanced the books really well. But yeah, I mean, Anthony Robinson, I think, is a brilliant shout. Another interesting shout as well, and I think you mentioned he was on your bench actually. Bryce Samba. I mean, what a brilliant season he's had.
Yeah, and good is what I call a personality goalkeeper as well. Some people want keepers who are just going to, be like a Bielkowski we used to have at Ipswich, who's at Millwall now. He's just going to do his job, no frills, and save all the shots he should. Whereas Samba was a big personality, and I think it was in a game against Leeds. Do you remember the save where I think Cooper headed it and he sprawls back and punches away from the line? So, I mean, we'll talk about Forest in a minute. I think I saw Forest 4 times and they didn't concede a goal as well. But I just went with, I've seen Raya ping the ball to either fullback from 40 yards and make great saves as well. So that just flipped it for me. Yeah,
no, I get that. And obviously an honourable mention as well, Ethan Pinnock and Joe Worrell, absolutely brilliant seasons at the back alongside Ben White. So I guess let's get into the key talking point at the start. Let's start with the promotion picture, since we've just been talking about Leeds. Let's involve West Bromwich Albion as well. Ben, never in doubt, was it?
Not really. No, I did try and tell you guys for a long, long while. Do you remember I went on All Leeds TV just before lockdown, and there was all this panic about the Fulham game, and I said, there is not any metric that you can find that will persuade me that Leeds are going to mess this up this season. And in the end, okay, a couple of defeats at the end for the Rivals, but 10 points clear, thoroughly well deserved. We'll miss you greatly, but you know, it's been really good to watch, and it's been really great to have someone of Bielsa's kind of character in the league. I know we've had, say, Rafa Benitez before. I remember Graham Taylor coming back to Watford after he'd managed England and managing in the Championship. But yeah, Bielsa's been brilliant. Leeds have been brilliant. And I know you were half tongue-in-cheek, but honestly, no, it wasn't ever in doubt. Once it was, 12, 13 points clear in December, the run. But I was at the game at Brentford, which was the turning point where Casilla made another mistake, but Leeds battled back. That bad run ended, and then a few weeks later, I was at the game at Hull, and wow, you know, it was okay. They're fine. They're up. Let's just look at second place.
And yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, that, Ben. And obviously, I think the break, I mean, we spoke about it yesterday on a podcast we did as well. I think the break did Leeds a lot of good, but probably a team that didn't do as positively from the break. I would signpost West Bromwich Albion at that. You know, three wins in 10, and then obviously Brentford on the assault with an incredible run, and then it seemed the pressure got to Brentford at the end, losing 2 out of 2 against when the pressure really was on against two of the bottom teams, really. And you know, what are your thoughts on sort of West Brom and their end of the season? And I mean, it's a bit of a sweeping statement, but are they sort of lucky at the end that Brentford ran out of gas?
Yeah, I mean, by definition they are, aren't they? Because I think Brentford have only needed 1 point from the last 2 games to get over the line. I know the context would have changed on the last game, obviously, but I did a video on West Brom a couple of days ago, and all the research led me to the conclusion that West Brom have been promoted for a mixture of 3 reasons. One is just size of club and financial muscle, and they've still got parachute payments, and that means a lot in the Championship. 2, a good manager who can see how a game is going and work around it. And 3, just good recruitment in terms of Sawyers, Diangana and Pereira, both loans, and Pereira's a really good deal as well. And Ajayi as well. So he basically signed the backbone of his team. Are they on Leeds, Brentford, or even Fulham's level on pattern of play? Probably not. I think one really impressive performance against Swansea where they did them 5-1 and they looked fantastic. But then Pereira was having a day that day as well, and you know, kind of destroyed them by himself. But no, I think just the mixture of those 3 things got West Brom over the line. And Brentford, yeah, I mean, we had a laugh on my channel. I've doubted that Brentford could do it just because they came back from such a big points differential to make up, and 10 wins on the trot in the Championship, is just as rare as hen's teeth. Once in 15 years, and that was Aston Villa last season with the biggest wage budget ever, and Jack Grealish playing about 3 levels below where he should be playing as well. You know, so yeah, Brentford. I'm trying to stand up for Brentford because people are now calling them bottlers, and that's incredibly harsh as far as I'm concerned. Yes, by definition, at the start of the game against Stoke, if they'd have just drawn 0-0, they would have gone into second, and they lost. Maybe they tripped up, maybe they blew it, but they didn't bottle it, did they? You know, it was an amazing run, and I think people are being a bit unfair to a decent job by Bilic and West Brom, and Brentford should now be playoff favourites, I think, Connor.
Yeah, and obviously the team that is in 3rd place, notoriously, a lot of people turn around and say 3rd place don't go up, but that is a load of waffle. 12 times, and I learned that from the Benjamin Bloom channel yesterday. 12 times out of, I can't remember, since the Championship's beginning. Obviously. Yeah, there you go. So it's 3rd of naturally have the highest percentage of going up. But if we just revert back to the bottom of the table, last day scenes at the bottom of the table with regards to Brentford and Barnsley, the great escape since Gerhard Struber's come in. Barnsley have looked a completely different team, 10th in the form tables, sort of sewing up the defensive woes aside from Stoke away when the ship 4. But I mean, for example, when they came to Leeds, they were superb and deserved more that day. I mean, are we talking about Gerhard Struber as one of the managers of the season, Benjamin?
I suppose with a massive bucket of hindsight, possibly, but no, he's not. Look, I would have had Sabri Lamouchi as one of the managers of the season about 4 days ago. So, but now that it all changes, doesn't it? And again, if Fulham win the playoffs, we'll say, oh no, Parker did all right in the end. If they don't, he'll probably be fired. You know, that's what it's like. Look, Barnsley, for the longest time, I said they took too long to get from Stendhal to Struber, and that will kill them. Too far behind, but just incredible escape. But then Luton got 51 points, Connor. 51. Yeah. Luton. What a performance that is as well. Absolutely sensational. But I'm in the midst of doing 3 relegation videos at the moment. All I will say, owners relegate clubs. And just look at Hull, look at Wigan and the disgraceful, the bad luck that the Wigan players and fans are going to get because of this administration. And then look at Charlton, complete ownership mess all the way, for years now. They thought they'd sorted it in the summer and then, mid-season, and that was embarrassing as well. So good luck to Luton, good luck to Barnsley surviving. Obviously, Huddersfield and Stoke still had parachute money and, good players there. They should be surviving, shouldn't they? But it was the way Barnsley did it was sensational. Yeah,
it really was superb, and it's a very good point. The fact that owners do sort of relegate clubs and they sort of promote clubs as well, don't they, Benjamin? It works in tandem, really. So the playoffs then, such a lucrative and slightly Americanized structure for me. How much does it mean for clubs to get that final position? We saw the celebrations last year with Villa when they beat Derby in the final, but do people sort of take lightly the financial gain and sort of leaving the burden and the grit of the Championship for the promised land? And do the teams really suffer afterwards, Benjamin? Because I hark back to I lived in Sheffield for near on 3 or 4 years when Sheffield Wednesday lost that final to Hull. They've been on a real downer since then. I mean, how important is it for these 4 teams to get that spot?
Oh, can you imagine any other business? Imagine your business, running this. If I said to you, right, in 2 days' time, you're going to do a podcast with me. If it goes well, your viewers are going to go up by 150%. Yeah. If it goes badly, you're basically screwed, unless you can get another podcast with me in a year's time. And then, do you know what I mean? Any other business. Can you imagine writing that into a business plan? Well, our earnings from broadcast this year are 4 million, but next year they could be 100 million. It's just complete insanity. And that's the beautiful thing about it. But that's the reason why the Championship is a mess, an absolute mess. And then you put the parachute payments in to create that extra tier as well. And it's just craziness, isn't it? So who have we got? Fulham with parachutes, Cardiff with parachutes, Brentford without, Swansea. And then last year?
It must have been the last year.
Yeah, so essentially, I don't need to do my parachute speech, do I? Because I've just told you 3 out of the 4 teams in the playoffs are this season currently receiving parachute payments. Oh, and by the way, West Brom, who are receiving them, they've already got promoted as well. So well done, Leeds. Well done, Brentford, for running a tight ship and going against that massive tide. Look, I know it's not the be-all, end-all of everything, but there's just no words you can use to describe how much of a difference it can either literally change everything about your club winning that game, literally overnight. So yes, absolutely massive. And as well, for someone like Brentford, who's never been there, could be the making of them, could literally change them for 20 years. And then for someone like Fulham, who spent last year and they've got year 1 parachute and they don't do it, next year, it's panic stations already. We've got 1 year parachutes left. Do we sack our manager? Can we afford to keep this player, that player? What about our star striker who everyone's got in their team of the year? We're going to have to sell him. Do you know what I mean? So it's just gargantuan is the only word I can use to describe it.
Very nice word as well. But yeah, I think I completely agree with you, mate. And we saw that with Villa last season, didn't we? Where it was sort of, excuse the phrase really, but it was shit or bust. They had to go up there and spend a lot of money. And if Villa had have stayed in the division, they'd have been in deep trouble last year. I think we know that from sort of the accounts that were released. So it's massive. It is huge. And it's really interesting that you talk about parachute payments there. And I guess that just it gives an absolute sort of an even bigger well done to the clubs like Leeds and like Brentford for making that transition.
Preston and Bristol City do a really good job of recycling the recruitment as well, and also not denigrating Leeds, but compare Leeds' commercial revenues to someone like Brentford as well, where Leeds has just got such a gigantic fan base and ability to make money. It shows how superbly well that Brentford and look at Millwall 8th, going up against Stoke and Huddersfield and these teams. So there are teams doing really, really good jobs, but it just all feels like it's on a knife edge. Just one bad season and you're screwed. One good season, Norwich's season last year, and they're now fixed for the next 3 seasons, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Ben, just because Johnny Slater, good friend of mine, he's just put, what lessons can Leeds learn from Norwich? And what lessons can Leeds learn from Norwich's relegation this season? And when does Ben think we'll see the East Anglian derby again? I think, well, Johnny is a Norwich fan. So, what are your thoughts on that, Ben?
The East Anglian derby will be in the EFL Leasing Trophy, and it will be against Norwich under-23s. And we'll probably lose from being 1-0 up after 89 minutes, and we'll lose 2-1 to an own goal or something. But it's a bit difficult because even since Norwich went up, the model's changed a little bit more now. Because you look at both Villa and Leeds have done clever. It's loan deals now, isn't it? You don't sign Britta Sombalonga for 15 million quid now, and he's going to score 20 goals and up you go. No, it's right. We get this French goalkeeper, and if we go up, we do a deal. We get Costa on the wing and Harrison on the wing. If we go up, we do a deal. So, and there was this sense last year with Mings and Tuanzebe and Abraham. Look, obviously those deals weren't as well written as the ones that Leeds have done for Costa and Harrison and Meslier and Augustin. If God knows what happens with that, whether they want that to go through, whether it's will still or not. But the one thing that Norwich did have over Leeds a little bit is that there weren't big loan players. Their big loan was Jordan Rhodes, and Timu Pukki was way better than him on a free transfer. So I suppose in that respect, Championship teams going up now, and I did feel a bit sorry for Villa last year when people were saying, "Oh, they've bombed all their TV money," and it's like, no, they went up with a borrowed team. Teams can't afford to buy their team to get promoted now, so they have to borrow it. And so now with Leeds, and I get asked literally 5 times every chat, will Ben White go to Leeds? Will Ben White go to Leeds? It's now you've got this situation where you've borrowed a really, really good player who looks Premier League ready. And of course, the whole world knows he's really good now. So the price goes up and up, and the likelihood. So you get a situation where for Leeds to even match their promotion team now, they need to have Ben White or someone equivalently good as Ben White, which will cost you £35 million, won't it? Yeah. Or more straight away. So Norwich had that over Leeds. What can they learn is that, look, they're 2 different situations. Leeds are ready to go. Norwich were on the verges of ruin before the season before, and great season by James Maddison and some good recruitment got them up without parachute payments. Leeds, I think, will be a bit more comfortable with spending, and I suppose the biggest difference is QSI and people in the background ready to invest, and Norwich being a self-funded, as they like to tell us, Jonathan, every other minute that they don't have a rich owner, and fair play to them, but it's an apples and oranges comparison. I think and given size of club as well. Look what Leeds have got going up. The manager's ready, obviously. Huge support and commercial revenues. Just need a few players, to add to the team. Whereas Norwich, weren't sure about the manager. He'd never done it there. Small in comparison with a Leeds or an Aston Villa, say. And then on the pitch, a load of unproven players. You've got to try and fix up a few of those things. But that would be my long answer, which doesn't even answer the question. But I'm sure what they will learn is you can't stick a championship team in the Premier League with young players, Godfrey, Aarons, Lewis, Cantwell, who've only played probably Pablo Hernandez has probably played more games in the last 4 years than all those players put together, at the top level. So you can't just throw in, no disrespect, Liam Cooper, Luke Ayling, never played there. Stuart Dallas, great player, but aging Klitsch's never played there. Harrison Costa will be okay. Bamford, he even gets questioned in the Championship. So just needs some sensible recruitment, including the signing of Ben White, obviously.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the key difference with Leeds and Norwich, for me, probably will be recruitment. You look at who they brought in. I think they spent 1.1 million, which is insane. I know Stuart Webber had a 5-year plan, but to turn up and say we're going to use this year as a free hit. You just expect them to be planning for years ahead. Potentially, there's rumours coming from Norwich as well that they were sort of expecting it and preparing for relegation. Which I think the difference with Leeds is you've had the owner coming out and saying, we're looking in 3 or 4 years to the top 6.
They're really good there, aren't they?
Yeah, we are. And it's been 16 years in the making, and we're ready to go. And I think we'll spend a little bit more. You look at Sheffield United, keeping that core nucleus, keeping that back line, I think is key. And definitely. So let's move on to we're 26 minutes in, Benjamin, and we haven't even touched on the absolute chaos that is Nottingham Forest. What on earth happened? Why? No wins in 6, conceding goals for fun in those last 6, losing games they should be winning. I mean, are they a team that were hampered with the lack of crowd, or did the lack of quality, if so, come to the fore? I'm not sure. What do you think?
Oh, God. So many good questions there. First of all, they were doing a good job to be comfortably 5th. So the first thing we need to, in deference to Sabri Lamouchi, is it was impressive that they were 5th. But we all thought they would stay there, didn't we? Very good, stable selections, very good without the ball, don't give away many chances. And then Lolly and Graben and even Amiobi were ruthless. They'd try and explain XG around Nottingham Forest because they lost it every week but still won games. But as all the football analysts will tell you, if you're continually outperforming XG, one of 2 things will happen. Either you will regress to the mean, or your XG will come round and you'll stop outperforming it. And did they regress to the mean? I don't know. Had they had too many just close games go their way? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
We talk about take Norwich. Seemed like every close game went Norwich's way in their title push last year. Is there a thing that we saw at Leeds last year and a psychological? It just got in their heads and they then had shoes of lead. I don't know. But Connor, I was doing a live stream that night, and when Figueiredo scored, there was 30 minutes to go. They were 3 points clear and 5 goals ahead with 30 minutes to go. There cannot have been, and under any normal circumstances, you and I would be sat here, they just shipped 4 of those goals instead of 6. We'd be sitting here going, good job, Lamouchi. Well done. You got them in the playoffs in your first season. Now you've done the double over Brentford this season. Can you go and do it again? But what do you think? Just baffling insanity.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think Lamucci's done a superb job. He's steadied the ship. Forest have always sort of been a 9th, 10th team really over the past sort of like 5, 6, 7, even probably 10 years. They've not been really, progressive as a club for me. I think there's a lot of dodgy ownership, and as you've said, teams just cannot progress. As we know a few Leeds United fans in this chat. We've had it for 16 years, bad ownership, and it is one of those things where they've managed to get things right this year. And, it's his first season in charge, but it's a devastating blow because maybe a few of those players are going to be picked off as well. I cannot imagine Graben's going to stick around. Joe Lolly, is he going to be picked up potentially by West Bromwich Albion if they want, the cream of the crop for the Championship? Joe Worrell, fantastic defender. And I think a 7-goal swing as well, by the way. We talk about teams bottling it. I mean, and that it's horrible. I mean, that phrase bottling it, as I'm sure Benjamin, absolutely shivers down my spine. But it is an unbelievable fall from grace, as you will, in the playoffs. And a lot of people were tipping Nottingham Forest, weren't they? I think for the playoffs.
I was. I'm in that camp. I said, "Oh, give me 180 minutes in the playoffs and Sabri Lamucci in my dugout, and I think, well, I might keep one clean sheet and only concede 1 goal in this game. So I've got a chance of winning if I can create a couple of high percentage chances." I was one of them. So yeah, I wouldn't even, unless I'm ridiculous, I wouldn't even say that's a ridiculous thing to say. You made a really good point I wanted to pick up on, which goes back to what you said about Sheffield United, because what Sheffield United did with their recruitment, and when we're talking about Joe Lolly now, is they kind of said, well, we'll back ourselves, but if we do go down, we're going to pick out the best players that played against us last season, the ones that would fit our system, and you end up with McBurney, and who do they have? Robinson,
Osborne, Freeman.
Exactly. You Leeds fans know about Freeman as well. Don't worry, he always played well against Ipswich as well. But that you've just outlined what would be a really good recruitment strategy for West Brom would be, well, okay, we don't have Leeds' pattern of play or management or club size. Let's buy up the best Championship players, and if we go down, we'll go down with parachute money, and we'll have the best squad in the league. So you're totally right. With someone like Joe Lolly, that's actually a really good shout in respect of him. Although he's Aston Villa fan, isn't he? There's always that link there with Lolly to Villa. But I've been thinking for months, Villa will go down and they'll sell Grealish and they'll have a bucket load of cash, and then they'll have to sign 3 players to replace Grealish. He might leave anyway, even if they stay up. But yeah, that's a good shout. But Forest just baffling, and I know many Forest fans, and yeah, they just don't get it. It's just such a collapse. And if you did watch my playoff video, you'll know also the lowest ever points total to be promoted through the playoffs is 70, and Swansea are in there on 70. So Forest's collapse has literally let in someone on the lowest point. It's not the lowest points ever to be in the playoffs, but to win the playoffs. That's what Forest have, what did you say? Like 1 point from the last 6 games or 2 or something. And they would have been through there, wouldn't they?
Well, they were just, I mean, when we've played them this season, they were just such a strong outfit to break down. And it was one of the away games where Leeds played where we didn't deserve anything from it. They completely stifled us. And you just thought then maybe coming up against a Brentford or a Fulham, who were nice, flowing, dynamic sides, they would cause some real problems. And I mean, could you have put it down to a lack of crowd to push them over the edge?
You would think a team that's really good without the ball would be fine. Some teams need the intensity to attack and to get them going, but they can play without the ball for 15 minutes, couldn't they? And I saw them at Brentford. They won 1-0. They scored a jammy deflected goal after 15 minutes, and then just comfortable. I also saw them pick QPR off 4-0 away as well. They looked like a good team. I just don't know what's happened.
So Sunday night, we have Brentford versus Swansea now. The Swans got in there on the last day, obviously. Monday night, Cardiff, Fulham. Do you think it's the home or away leg is the sort of most important to have first. So if you were Brentford, would you prefer the away game first or the home game first?
Any other year, I'd give you a different answer than I'm going to give right now. But it doesn't overly matter this year now, does it? Because of the lack of crowds. I mean, no doubt you were there at Leeds Derby last season, and when that anxiety, as soon as that first goal went in and that anxiety came over the ground, it can actually work against you. And I've been there. My team, Ipswich, has been tagged with Derby 8 times in the Championship playoffs, the most. And some nights it works for you, some nights it works against you. And I think with the absence of away goals now, I just really don't think it's going to make that much difference, especially when you talk about traditional home and away performances, and you're talking about particularly Fulham and Brentford, who are just going to want to keep the ball the whole time, aren't they? Which would, against, say, a Cardiff, they'd be absolutely fine with that, wouldn't they? You know, home or away, they'd say, that's fine. You have the ball, we'll counter-attack you. And it's exactly what Forest would have done, wouldn't they? So I don't know that it's going to make too much difference, is it?
No, I think it's a very valid point. I mean, we've not really seen that many patterns in sort of away teams going to away grounds and really being stifled by the crowd. It's been sort of an even keel, really. Yeah, with regards to the key players, obviously with Brentford, Swansea, Cardiff, and Fulham. I would probably say for Fulham, I think the key player is Harrison Reed. A lot of people are looking at Mitrovic, but I think defensively, when teams potentially Brentford, if they meet them in the final, if they are counter-attacking, I think Harrison Reed's been absolutely superb this year. I think Cardiff, I'd probably be looking at Lee Tomlin. I think his creativity is something that is it gives Cardiff a bit of a license to play, I think. I mean, they're the two really. I mean, Ben Rama, obviously, and Watkins. And who else am I missing? Have I missed Fulham, Cardiff, Brentford, and Swansea? Yeah, I'd probably go with Swansea. With Conor Gallagher, I mean, I think he's a superb player. A lot of people are touting Ryan Brewster has been the finisher. And yeah, don't get me wrong, he's the marksman, but Conor Gallagher is absolutely superb this year. And the 2 times I've seen him at Charlton and for Swansea the other day playing Leeds United, he's probably had Calvin Phillips' number, which I think is a difficult thing to do. So who are you looking at in the playoff structure there, Benjamin, for each team? Who are going to be the key players?
Yeah, you've named most of the ones I would have said. I mean, Brentford's so obvious because we know exactly how they're going to line up. We know exactly how they're going to play, and we all know that Ben Rama is the best player there. It's just stating the bleeding obvious, isn't it? So you think that in terms of Swansea, when you look at it on paper, Swansea shouldn't have much hope against Brentford, should they? I've looked at the 2 games. I was at one of the games on Boxing Day actually, and Brentford ran in 3-1. They won the other game 3-0, so 6-1 across the 2 games. But we've seen this. I mean, what about Leeds and Derby last year? That was 6-1, wasn't it? Yeah. Across the 2 games, and particularly the Spygate game was one of the best performances I've seen in the Championship in years. Actually, it was a brilliant performance. But then playoffs are playoffs, aren't they? So if Swansea are going to do it, I mean, yeah, Brewster looks. I've said for a while now, he's next season's Abraham, isn't he? Someone's going to loan him, and he's going to score 20 goals in the Championship. Ayu's a very good player, isn't he? In terms of caliber as well. But you'd think Brentford would have the number over Swansea. In terms of the other games, I wouldn't underestimate the influence like Sean Morrison to carry from the Warnock through to Harris. You need your kind of captain figure to span the 2 eras and be the conduit between the manager and the rest of the playoffs. And I know he's I just love classic Championship centre half, so Sean Morrison all day long. But Hoylett looks like he's playing quite well. And you mentioned Tomlin under Harris has been superb, hasn't he? That could be interesting actually, couldn't it? Fulham, I mean, it's stating the bleeding obvious because Mitrovic in the Championship is just, so we've got 180 minutes. He'll likely score at least 1, possibly 2 goals statistically, won't he, across the semi-final? Because at this level, you can't stop him, can you? So Yeah, it'd be interesting. We've all been waiting all season as well to see Cavaliero, Mitrovic, and Knockout actually play well in the same match at the same time. That hasn't happened when we all thought, oh, dream ticket, they'll get promoted with that front three. But I would have Brentford quite strong favourites. The other one, not so sure. Not so sure on that one. You can see some of those wily Cardiff players and an inexperienced Scott Parker possibly coming across. But Brentford Fulham final then?
Yeah, or Swansea Cardiff. Who knows? Is it key to have a good result, Benjamin, before you go into the playoffs? Is that a key, or does form? Do you believe the old cliche of form going out the window for these sort of things?
I don't know, actually. It's a really good question. I mean, I'm sure you could do some lovely nerdy analysis of that, which I'd probably quite enjoy doing myself. It really depends, doesn't it? Because if you look, I'm thinking about Aston Villa last year, where literally on the last game of the season, they took McGinn and Grealish out of the team to avoid a suspension basically through the game against Norwich, didn't they? Then I'm thinking about Huddersfield under David Wagner, where with about 3 games to go, they just stopped with the league and focused on the playoffs and won the playoffs, didn't they? Gloriously, without winning a single game and winning on penalties every time. So I think it depends on what the focus of the manager has been. And that's where this myth that you were talking about comes. Oh, they were going for second place. Well, you don't know that Brentford, haven't been looking at playoffs, and mentioning it and talking about it. And I know publicly Thomas Frank has been, we can still do it. But he might have been saying to his players for a while, look, you're doing amazing. Expect playoffs, but automatic could happen. They could be really well prepared. You don't know. So, but in terms of form, it's Fulham, isn't it? The form team out of the 4 of those. But again, with the least experienced manager and the most experienced manager in there for playoffs is Neil Harris, who won League One playoffs with Millwall, didn't he? So totally up in the air.
Yes, I mean, Swansea as well, they've, aside from the Leeds United game, they played Forest away, drew 2-2 with a man sent off. But aside from that, it's been 4 wins out of 6. And I mean, they're going into it absolutely buoyed, obviously, after that 7-goal swing. I mean, you'd expect a completely different Swansea to face Brentford this time around, wouldn't you?
Yes, and you're literally right, because both of those games were before Christmas. And I think Borja Baston was still there and he was the striker then, so Brewster wasn't even there at that point. So it will literally be, and Conor Gallagher wouldn't have been there either, would he? So essentially the 2 players you've mentioned, that's probably quite a good caveat to the 2 results. I'll use that in my video later.
I think as well, Benjamin, they didn't play. I think it was Ben Cabango. I don't think he was featuring Ogwady from Chelsea, who they brought in January.
No, yeah, like I say, it was October and December. So it's one of those weird ones where the fixtures come 6 weeks apart. You play. So yeah, you're totally right about that. It's just hard, isn't it? It's across a season. Swansea, well, they're not as good as Brentford, clearly, but you make a really good point. It doesn't matter. Last 46 games don't matter now. It's a 3-game cup tournament, and they have got Brewster now, and they have got Gallagher now, but they don't have Ben Rama.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. And, even just players in the Brentford side like Mbuemo, who's scored, 14, 15 goals this season, an absolute snip, I think, at about 1-2 million, classic Brentford. Yeah, and obviously there will be Boyd as well. Not just only that factors, but a massive influence in the changing room in Mike van der Horn coming back in the side.
Yeah, and they've been doing a 3 at the back as well, haven't they? So literally entirely different organism. And I think Van der Horn as well, I think his contract up? I don't know whether they've got an option on that as well. So that was a really big one. And well done, Mike van der Horn, for not refusing to play like some Lyle Taylor players that we and at Hull as well, Leaky and Irvine. There's any number of players that wouldn't be. I'm sure they've come to some kind of deal with him, but He'd be a good one for you, actually, wouldn't he, Van der Horn?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was the one a lot of Leeds fans were sort of looking at when Janssen went, a good ball player and had a really good game at Ellen Road. And yeah, it's interesting you just mentioned the extension of contracts, and very sadly, Gaetano Berardi extended his contract, missed the Leeds United, and he's now out for 9 months. So I mean, it's just how committed he is to the club. I mean, that's the fabric of what Leeds have been this year. But moving on to Cardiff City, then Benjamin, 3 wins out of 6, as we've spoken about. Form goes out the window, including a loss to Fulham away. Now, I wanted to touch on this Fulham game because I was watching this game and I thought maybe Cardiff are going to be able to completely neutralise Fulham with the playing to their strengths, and they played to their strengths so well. I mean, as a Leeds United fan, I watched our first game back, obviously, and even at Ellen Road. As soon as you start playing into Cardiff's way of things, as soon as you start trying to put the ball in the box, they stifle you through the middle and on the flanks. You really are in a fight because you play to their strengths, and you're going to lose, 10 times out of 10. So is that Fulham game a sort of reason to maybe not back Cardiff in this this semi-final fixture?
It's hard to say, isn't it? And Neil Harris has been there twice, because do you remember the game in August, Millwall, Fulham, and he tried to sit back, and Parker absolutely destroyed him, didn't it? It was 4-0, and they had record 82% ridiculous possession stats or something like that.
Probably their game of the season, wasn't it? That, I think.
Yeah, it was actually, wasn't it? And you think, oh, here we go, here comes 90 points for Fulham and a promotion, but didn't transpire that way, did it? So there is this idea that at Craven Cottage that Fulham have got Harris's number, but as you were saying, I was just thinking you can take Warnock out of a club, but you can't take the influence he has on the players there out of the players. You're right; they do all of that stuff so well, and it's all his doing, isn't it? From the couple of years he was there and the promotion there, and you'd think that would be the way Cardiff would do it. Might be one of those ones where it just comes a bit soon for Cardiff under Harris, because I remember the really good Millwall team in 17-18 under Harris didn't play like a Neil Warnock team. It was quite high energy and would press forward, very direct, like a Warnock team would be, but a lot more mobile and, far be it actually wanting the ball out of play, they were getting the ball back into play, the exact opposite, much quicker. But yeah, it's an interesting point. And yeah, 2 games for Harris at Craven Cottage and 6-0 aggregate scoreline so far. So maybe 0-0 might do them in that first game, and neutralising is the right word.
Yeah, and obviously you talk about Fulham there, four wins out of 6, drawn 2 there as well to Wigan, who have been ridiculous in this run. Yeah, and so unlucky, and West Bromwich Albion, where that could have gone either way. Yeah, I think. I mean, if I was a Fulham fan, you'd be thinking on not only the playoff final win, but a Brentford final and revenge, wouldn't you?
Yeah, quite probably. But it's playoffs. You and I were both in that stadium in Leeds a year ago. Stuart Dallas scored 2-0. It's like, right, how on earth am I going to get a Wembley ticket now? Hopefully I can get one through the Villa end. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Then mad things happen. But you talked about the fans. That wouldn't have happened in an empty stadium, that collapse last year. Do you know what I mean? The anxiety and everything wouldn't have been there. The players would have been able to keep calmer and more controlled. The manager and the technical area would have been able to have more influence on chilling Berardi and Garcia, and I don't think it would have happened. So maybe the crazy, chaotic playoff games don't happen without crowds. Believe me, the greatest game I've ever seen in my life was Ipswich 5, Bolton 3. First leg was 2-2, so 7-5 on aggregate. Ipswich were 1-0 down, 2-1 down, 3-2 down. There were 2 red cards and 3 penalties, and but that's playoffs. That tension gets to the pitch, and these guys who are normally the coolest, most professional, most focused. You ever speak to a footballer, so driven and focused. But these playoffs, man, they could do funny things. And you're right, the crowd not being there is going to maybe take that intangible away, which might favour third and fourth even more.
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, third and fourth. And I think as well, Swansea, I think it's a bit inexperienced in that playoff scenario. You need experience in there. And I think that's why you bang on with Cardiff and potentially having those experienced heads in there in Morrison and Etheridge and co. So with regards to Brentford then, I'm getting the feeling that you are nudging a little bit towards Brentford, which is completely understandable. 8 wins out of 10. Literally one of the informed teams in the division, superb outfit. Even in the midfield, a lot of people ignore that midfield, but that, Norgard just in front of the defence has done an absolutely fantastic job. Jensen, De Silva, who's a cracking little player. And it is it's a really well-rounded squad, isn't it? And you'd expect, even with the depth coming off the bench, Canos now back in the fold, Fosu, are Brentford the favourites?
Yeah, and I call it my little kickoff theory that I have is that, like, you and I could talk now probably for 3 or 4 hours, and at different times you could persuade me every one of the 4 teams was going to win. And then what I would say to you is, right, you sat down, you're watching the game, or you're in the stadium, maybe one day soon, and kickoff's about to happen, and all of a sudden you see everything very, very clearly, don't you? And you see who's lining up against you and you think, oh, God. Or you look at your team and you think, nah, we're going to be all right. At kickoff in all of those games, you'd want to be a Brentford fan, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was interesting. I was watching your video on your channel yesterday, and it was the third statistic is something that because in my head it was you finished third and you've missed out on that push.
Well, but when third place loses, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, that's natural. That's naturally what happens. But with Brentford, it was the unlikely lads really, and them getting towards that top 2, 11 points off. Coming post lockdown. So that I mean, it was just a free hit really. See if we can get anywhere near them. See if the boys at the top slip up. And fortunately, we didn't, and they couldn't take advantage. But I struggled to see a weakness in that team, and the only 2 times, obviously, recently. It was against Stoke and Barnsley, but are you going to face teams like that in the playoffs? Did it mean it felt like it meant so much to Barnsley and it meant so much to Stoke? And I understand the playoff structure, it means a lot to all of them, but you just got a different vibe, didn't you, from those other 2 games?
Well, and we'll be able to find out now, because essentially in the playoffs, you do have a little bit of a free hit. And don't people, the first game. So if Brentford are completely relaxed in the first game and play beautifully, where you can't be knocked out in the first game. Even if you lose 4-0, you could, we're just in Forest and Swansea, haven't we? So will they be really relaxed in the first game and play really well? And then we'll know if they are that horrible word that I'm not going to say, and the tension and the anxiety gets to them as and when they can see the finish line. Be very, very interesting. But yeah, I always look at the end of everything. I always look at how well drilled is this team? How far are they in their plan? And do all their players know their pattern of play? And Brentford are just the furthest on in that. But hey, I always thought that about my Ipswich teams. And then here came Howard Kendall, and then Alan Kirbishley, and then Sam Allardyce. And they systematically, we were always the better footballing team, but they systematically set up, stopped us, and beat us.
Yeah, and before we get on to your prediction of what you think will happen and who you think will be in the final, we'll just read out a few comments here, Benjamin. So Paul G, hope Brentford don't go up. Would love Leeds to raid them for players. What are your thoughts on that? Oh,
good left back, Rico Henry, good player. And obviously we've mentioned him several times. It'll cost you 40 million probably, but good left winger up there as well, isn't there? So. Yeah, but remember, if Brentford don't go up, there will be teams with a lot more money than Leeds, going to want some Brentford players. But you just got to hope that they're not as much in the know, having not played against them like Leeds have. But, these recruitment companies know everyone's inside leg measurement from the age of 13. They know every player walking the face of the earth. So,
Benjamin, do you think we were just, because Brentford have been so fantastic and they've been on this, this old Brent Alona sort of journey at the minute, and it is. We look at the playoff structure and we look at Cardiff, look at Swansea and Fulham. Are Brentford going to be hurt more by not going up in terms of just the amount of players they have and teams literally just picking them off, which, you can see with the likes of potentially Ethan Pinnock, Rico Henry, Norgard especially, De Silva, who's only young. You've got Watkins, Benrahma. I understand that their recruitment model is superb and they'll be able to go out and potentially replenish a lot of that. But you're playing a bit of a game, aren't you, being able to recruit at such a high standard consistently season in, season out, and especially with the pressures of the new stadium coming in?
Well, they've done it though, haven't they? They've done it for 4 or 5 years now and kept that recruitment up. In the spirit of your question, you said, would it hurt them more? To answer the question exactly, it would hurt them the least out of the 4 teams, because what you just said is totally right. That they've sold Konza, Mepham, Mopai, Hogan. I mean, we're going to go. There's probably 10 of them that we could list off that, and all 8 million sales up to 25 million for Mopai. So in theory, they're set up to be able to cope with this. But I think if I'm reading the inference of your question right, there's sometimes a sense that, this is the best chance. This is the best team you're going to have for a while.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's the caliber of the recruitment has been brilliant over so many seasons, but this caliber, they've seemed to just got it absolutely perfect, haven't they?
Yeah. And if you notice, the transfer fees just go up and up and up, and all of a sudden they're spending 5 million on Janssen, who's proven, or how much the fee was, proven championship player, and that's what you're now bringing in, as opposed to whoever they were signing 5 years ago. You have to ask a Brentford fan. But I mean, when you compare that to Fulham, who have just dropped the thick end of 20 to 30 million on Knockaert and Cavaliero, I know which kind of recruitment is going to survive a playoff defeat better than that. But hey, if Knockaert and Cavaliero win you the playoffs, then happy days, 100 million quid TV money, and those look like good deals, don't they? So no, you would think Brentford would continue on an upward trajectory, and Connor, they might even if they go up, they might still sell. Do you know what I mean? They might say, okay, well, we're now in the Premier League, so Benrahma will be 50 million, not 40 million, but you can have him for 50 million. We'll go and find someone else. Do you know what I mean? So they might do, but you are right. They say about being an entrepreneur, you just have to be right more often than you're wrong, don't you? Whereas with this type of recruitment, this Bristol City, Brentford, Preston type thing, you have to be right to a high level with at least one player every season. You've got to sell that. If Josh Brownhill or Adam Webster, or the people that have gone out of Bristol City, or Hugh Gill or Callum Robinson gone out of Preston, and even your Ronaldo Vieira, and then Jack Clark and Chris Wood before that as well. There has to be that one high value player every season. And I'm sitting in front of an Ipswich scarf. That's why my team are in League One. The end point for not producing that player and not competing with parachute payments is you will be relegated, or you'll be Mel Morris or Chansiri chasing and being just this side of FFP every season. So in some ways it is risky, yeah.
Is it just, you touched on Chansiri there and Mel Morris, and we don't obviously know the ins and outs of the lawsuit, but we see teams like Wigan and really suffering, but teams like Barnsley as well, who've worked within the constraints of FFP, brought in a lot of players from abroad and tried to work within the constraints. We saw a Barnsley FC statement as well yesterday, which was really interesting, which was just all about how they feel a bit let down by the league. Is it one of those things that you think, especially for this season, the sort of EFL have really got to step up and make these sanctions clear?
Yeah, and as you can probably tell, I always try and see the best in people. So I would say, rather than everybody, look, the EFL has been bad. Yes, we know they have made mistakes, and Sean Harvey wasn't very good. We know all of that. There's no point beating Rick Parry with that stick now. I think that you need to now give Rick Parry probably 2 years to sort it out. And if he doesn't sort it out, then then we can say this is the EFL's issue and they're rubbish, and we can beat them with as many sticks as we can. He's made some good comments about the solidarity payments. He called the parachute payments evil, which I'm a big fan of. That's the head of the EFL saying that. But on his watch, we've had someone pass the fit and proper persons test at Wigan and then put them into administration 6 weeks before the season ends and essentially relegate them, give them a death sentence, So pass. But I'm always hoping for the best and looking for the evidence is what I'm doing. So hopefully we'll get it sorted out. But you know what's going to happen is that the second that they sort out the parachute payments and make it all fair again will be just after Norwich have benefited from them again. And then it'll come back and not be able to benefit from anything at any point. That's what will happen, isn't it?
I love the Ipswich and Norwich link there. That's brilliant. Let's have a look at some comments here. We have Max with an interesting question here. Thoughts on betting sponsors on the kit in the Premier League?
What, in respects of what, conflicts of interests or moral?
I would. We'll touch on both.
Well, without sounding like a raving Tory, I believe in capitalism in a footballing sense, that you should raise as much money as you can to give your fans the best product. And if the person that's going to pay you the most money to write their logo across your shirt is a betting company, which at the moment it will be, it's fine by me. I'm okay with it. Obviously, when I see 3 different teams with, and you're a Leeds fan with 32 red on their shirt, then you start to wonder. And then if I'm a Leeds fan and Derby are getting Wayne Rooney with 32 red paying for him, am I then going to say you're going to buy us England's all-time top scorer now? And it starts to all get a little bit sticky, doesn't it? But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to make the cash somehow. The flow has got to come into the club. From a moral standpoint, I mean, I remember when Leeds had Strongbow on the front of the shirt, and Liverpool have had Carlsberg, and I know they got rid of that, so I can completely understand. But I think betting companies come under a different bracket of monetary income. Really, I think it's on a different level. So unfortunately, I think you're going to get companies carrying on with this, and that brings me on nicely to not the betting company, but the rumours of Edinson Cavani coming to Leeds. Benjamin, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. Heard rumours of the Cavani deal being tied to our Adidas deal. Would that be a good move financially? What are your thoughts? And I guess it's a good sort of follow on from the Sheffield United chat we had a little bit earlier on.
That's a really interestingly worded question, because would that be a good move financially, and would that be a good move for the team? Are two entirely
two different questions.
Yeah. I suspect financially it would probably be quite good, because you'd sell a lot of shirts and it would do a lot of publicity. Can I imagine Marcelo Bielsa being told that Adidas are essentially giving him a player? Can I imagine his reaction to that?
Yeah,
it wouldn't be. How old is Cavani now? I know he's scored literally hundreds of goals in his career. What is he?
He's 33.
It would just completely contradict everything that Leeds have done the past 2 years with their recruitment. But I've just said football is a capitalist game, and if they can do a deal that benefits them financially, and Bielsa's never going to sign off on anything that says, well, he has to play for 1,500 minutes in the Premier League on televised games wearing his Adidas everything. Do you know what I mean? They're never going to sign up for that. So let me put this question to you then. Would Leeds have been better or worse with Edinson Cavani or Pat Bamford up front this season?
Oh, God. What a question. I've got to try to be diplomatic here again. But with
championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange, isn't it? Because you look at Cavani and you think, I mean, and a lot of people were talking about there was a stat on Twitter and they said he missed 37 big chances, but that was in 16-17. And not only did he miss 37 big chances, but that season he scored 49 goals. So, he's an absolute goal machine. I think it's a lot of rubbish, to be honest. I think don't get me wrong. I think we're going to go for a marquee signing. But a lot of people are turning around and saying, we've got a 35-year-old, in Pablo Hernandez, and it's a completely different trajectory. This Edison Cavani is a Uruguayan international. He's been at the top of his game. He's played for PSG, one of the wealthiest clubs in the world, one of the best clubs in the world as well. Pablo Hernandez was in Qatar when we bought him, and he was sort of on a low ebb of his career, and we really reinvigorated him. So I think it's two different points. I know a lot of Leeds fans are bringing that up. So yeah, in answer to your question, with regards to Bamford, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Patrick Bamford, but I do like Patrick Bamford's work ethic. And I think, as we've spoken about earlier, it's all about the holistic unit and the team and the bond. It's the whole romanticism of Bielsa and Bielsa's Leeds United. So would I want Cavani in the side? I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, it's like I'm being taken to Ultimate Team on FIFA or something like that. It's crazy, but I wouldn't say no. But I would be much happier if I'm being brutally honest, Benjamin, going for maybe spending that money on an Eze, a Ben Rama, or a Watkins.
There you go. You're going to start to hear these ridiculous conversations amongst Leeds fans now of, well, we need a striker, so we need someone who is intelligent, who can follow Bielsa's instructions, who can physicality, can play in a 4-1-4-1, good pressing, good with his back to goal, good finisher. At which point I say, you've just described Didier Drogba, and that will cost you £125 million in today's market. Honestly, and I'd be interested in your views. Surely there must have been a lot of work gone into identifying Jean-Kevin Augustin. Surely they must have spent. You can imagine the process for Bielsa outlining a player must be all looked at. Could he not even still be the guy if they can get him fit and they can do a deal? I'm sure if he was the guy 3 months ago, I mean, unless they've seen something they particularly don't like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's flipped, hasn't it? I mean, we're all talking about Augustin being the next Thierry Henry about 3 or 4 months ago. So he's clearly a very good player. But it is one of those. It seems to be from the grapevine that he's come in. Victor Orta's done a lot of work behind the scenes to get him in. Bielsa's put him through the system that he always does, Marcelo Bielsa, and he's not hit the heights. And we thought we'd see him post lockdown, but we haven't. He's clearly still not hitting the heights. So it was interesting. We've not seen anything from him as well when we've won the championship. There's been no social media posts, which he was heavy on before. And with regards to the recruitment, he seemed to fit everything. He was strong. He worked well from the front. He was good off the ball. But the grade with Bielsa is making that weight, and if he's not making that weight, then it's the meticulous Marcelo. He's not going to make that starting lineup, and it has been a real shame, Benjamin, because we've had two top strikers at the club this year alongside Pat Bamford in JKA and Eddie Nketiah, and it's just not worked. And now we're working in a market where we've got 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, we were talking yesterday on the podcast. I mean, we could bring one of the top players. We could bring Mbappe in, and he's still not going to start ahead of Patrick Bamford for me on the first day of the season. It's not going to happen because they have to get. And this is why we've always said as well, just bringing it back to Leeds and Bielsa, that there's no point in January market anymore. There is no point because we don't see the players for 2 or 3 months, and that's the interesting side of it.
Can I just ask you about 2 Norwich players, about Buendia and Pukki, because they're both going down. Look, obviously, Buendia is really good, excellent player, and Pablo Hernandez is 35. But there's some ideas that he's going to want to go and play in Spain and that big clubs could get him. So give me your thoughts on Buendia. And don't laugh me out of the building here, for the things people criticise Pat Bamford for, and I know Teemu Pukki doesn't have huge physicality, but his pressing is excellent and his finishing is off the charts good as well. Could you see them going for anyone from Norwich?
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair few. I mean, once again, we don't get Ben White. I'd love to go for Ben Godfrey. A lot of people are not talking about him, but I don't know if he's a midfielder. I don't think he's a centre back. We saw that in the Premier League. He was caught out quite a bit, and did it for a season in the Championship, but didn't really transfer. But Buendia, wow, what a player! I mean, we were linked with him before Norwich actually, because he was at Cultural Leonesa, which is it was the link that we had when Radrizzani first came in, and there was talk of him. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So yeah, there was talk of him, and then it was scuppered.
Leeds, that is.
Yeah. So then it was scuppered by Phil Hay, our lead journalist. Leeds are interested in a player called Buendia. Oh, who's this? You check him out. Oh, another Cultural Leonesa. Norwich go in, snap him up for 1.25 million, but he would fit the mold perfectly. And I don't think he'd look out of place in that Brentford side, right now as well. And I think he does similar things to Ben Rama, but what a player! It's interesting. Pukki's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, has he been able to do it in the Premier League? Potentially not, but has he had a fit squad around him? He's not had that consistency of the Norwich team. There's been 6 or 7 players injured every single time. Huh?
He scored 11 goals.
Yeah, and that's it's a great return. I mean, Pat Bamford's got 16 in the Championship, so.
All I would say is, growing up, Ian Wright was one of my biggest football heroes. I just loved everything about him, the way he played, the way he scored different types of goal, and would just go mental after he scored. And I read his book, and he said the best advice he ever got was go cold exactly like Eze did the other night. Go cold when you go through on that chance. You don't tense up. You do the opposite. You relax. And you stroke it in the corner. And just over and again, I saw Timu Pukki do that for Norwich. It got to the point where I thought he was taking the mick. Wasn't even hitting it hard, but just stroking it in the corner from all positions. And, I always joke with Leeds fans about, if you'd had Mitrovic, or if you'd had even Billy Sharp the year, but I know you had him before, but just a finisher. Someone who's a finisher, or Pukki. I don't know. I just think I think people look at Pukki and think, oh, well, Bamford's about a foot taller and obviously a lot stronger. But I don't know.
I think as well, Ben, with regards to Bamford. I mean, if he could put away 30 and was pressing from the front, he'd be playing in the Premier League, wouldn't he, for a top club? And I think that's what a lot of people seem to forget with Bamford. It is, don't get me wrong, he's 16 goals. Could he have scored more? Yes, but then he'd be a top club in the Premier League, especially if he could press from the front and was as disciplined and working. Yeah, exactly. So but a lot of people are saying, if he works on his finishing, let me tell you, finishing is the hardest thing to work on because it's instinct.
Well, and that's why I don't know, Sergio Aguero has made 200 grand a week for the last 8 years of his career, isn't it? Because you're totally right. Every player on the football pitch, if they could finish, would be playing up front. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, this is an interesting one from Mark's story, Ben, and obviously we'll come to the end of this, and this is a huge thing on Leeds fans' mind, and we get a lot of comments from Leeds fans, obviously, on the In Full Swing podcast because someone has been producing content on Leeds for quite a while now. But do you think we'll get the Ben White deal done? Obviously, it seems like Brighton are digging in the heels a little bit. I mean, what are your thoughts? He seems to be happy at the club. He's come out and say he's happy. But if a club like Brighton can turn around and say, look, he's not going, is there a chance that Leeds will be completely priced out of the deal?
I wonder whether it's actually time for Ben White to actually politic a little bit and whether he can actually force the deal through himself, and whether his agent can go and say to Brighton, look, my player is really, really happy. Leeds will pay top dollar. Basically, he'll fulfill his contract, but he doesn't want to come back. Whether Ben White's people can start to lean on Brighton, but what you got to understand is what's best for Ben White's people is the biggest transfer fee possible, which means a good relationship. It's a really interesting one, isn't it? It makes all the sense in the world for the deal to be done. But like I said earlier in the show, Connor, he's been so good, and all that does is it benefits all parties. But then at the end of the loan, you still don't own him. So you're now not being benefited. Do you know what I mean? It benefits Ben White because he's a star. It benefits Brighton because their assets significantly gone up in value and may be ready to play at the top level now. But obviously it benefits Leeds because they're promoted. But now it feels like Brighton are holding the cards, doesn't it? And look, I'm an Ipswich fan. Webster, we all knew was going to be a brilliant player. And who did he play alongside? Is it Dunk? Brighton. So they've got two very good.
This is another. It's another little bit of a fraction of it, really. That's another a really good sort of point there, Ben. Because even if Ben White was, in their plans, I mean, is he going to be guaranteed football week in, week out? They only brought Webster for 35 million last year.
He's excellent as well. Really good player.
Yeah, so you've got to question whether or not. I mean, I know that part of the plans, but money does talk. I think at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, and people keep asking me. They use the term "break the bank," and it's all a bit up in the air. But if it was a choice between, for example, signing two players that had never worked under Bielsa, for both of them for 20 million, both centre halves, or signing Ben White for 40, I'd sign Ben White for 40. Because I know he's ready to go, and as well, Benjamin. Sorry to interrupt, but I think it was when we were talking about Sheffield United earlier, and Leeds are trying to base their model on that. Our owner has come out and said that. What the blueprint for Sheffield United has been keeping O'Connell, Egan, Basham, Stevens, and Baldock in that sort of back five, wing back sort of system, back three, and I think for Leeds now to make that next step up. I don't know if you can involve maybe an Argentinian in that back line. We've seen it with problems with Leeds before with the communication from the goalkeeper and the back line. I think you've got to surely look at keeping that consistency of that side because they know each other. And we know Bielsa's patterns of play so important. We know, for example, Ben White will know where Stuart Dallas is going to be at all times. Would you see that as a sort of problem if Leeds went to the continent or further afield for a player to fit in that system? Yeah, and as much as I do like Liam Cooper and I respect Liam Cooper and he's your captain and all of that jazz as well, is that you're then saying, so it's Liam Cooper who's worked his way up, but could be great in the Premier League, but who knows? Ben White, who we think is pretty much a guarantee of someone being good in the Premier League. Then it's Liam Cooper and another who's not ready to go. I think Cooper needs White. Else it's going to be maybe an all new centre half partnership. Although you're not going to just drop your captain overnight, are you? But and this remains to be seen, doesn't it, as to which of these players can go from Hull to Chesterfield to Leeds to finishing third to Bielsa to playoffs to first to Premier League now. I sound like David Brent now. Not everybody is going to make it. There's going to be some players in your team that have been absolutely brilliant that are not going to be good enough for the Premier League. It's just going to happen because, like you said about Pat Bamford, if it is what it is. If he was a 30 million quid striker, he'd be a 30 million quid striker, and he'd also be playing for Everton already, wouldn't he? So there's going to be players in there, and some might be a surprise. It's like Klitsch has been brilliant. Will he do the Premier League? I hope so. What happens if he sinks? You just don't know. You really, really just don't know. And White does seem like some kind of a guarantee, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We're talking about who are going to be the guarantees in the Premier League. I think you can earmark Calvin Phillips. I think he'll fit in superbly. We saw that when he sort of man-marked Ozil out of the game in the FA Cup. Ben White, I just think he's phenomenal. So he would. I think
two wide players as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Harrison's been within that development squad as well for Manchester City, hasn't he, his entire life? So you think he's been playing around those quality players. He's gone out on loan, learnt a lot, come back much stronger. And Costa as well. He's played at that level, maybe not to the level, but he's coming up against competition in that side, such as
he'll be fine.
Yeah. So I think I think, what we'll do, Benjamin, is we'll revert obviously back to the playoff structure now just to end the video.
Sorry.
Because we've had comments about Leeds, so obviously we had to touch on that, which is absolutely fine. Thank you for your comments. Please make sure you like the video, guys. Obviously, Benjamin's channel will be in the section below. If you've somehow not seen him before, crazy times that would be. But who are your favourites and who do you think potentially could be a little bit of a wild card if your favourites don't win it?
Well, you've talked me round about 8 different directions just in this conversation. I think I've got to go for a boring Brentford-Fulham final. I just think what we've said, absence of crowds, quality of opposition, style of play as well in terms of keeping the ball during those games for those two teams. I know Swansea are good at that, but they're not on Brentford or Fulham's level in those respects. So Brentford, Fulham final, and then flip of a coin, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd side with you. I think Brentford are going to do it. I think they're just a bit too good. But thanks for coming on, Benjamin.
You're welcome.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can do this again soon, mate. It's been a nice intellectual chat, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. We'll do a post playoff debrief as well. I think that'd be
wonderful. Yeah. Can I do a couple of plugs?
Say that again, mate.
Can I do a couple of plugs?
Yeah, of course you can. Fire away.
Yeah. So just type Benjamin Bloom into YouTube, and you will find my channel with lots of championship stuff. If you are a Leeds fan, which I know many of you are, we are having a new show next season, not just because Leeds went up, but because we lost Sheffield United and Norwich and Villa last season. So we're having a Dearly Departed show next season where I will cover West Brom, Leeds, Sheffield United, if Villa stay up, Villa, and whoever goes up from the playoffs. So there will be some good Leeds stuff. And follow me on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom. And I've got Instagram, but just put my dogs on there sometimes.
I do find Instagram a bit harder than Twitter. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, if you're not an attractive female just taking selfies of yourself, it's kind of like no one wants to see this, do they? So
that's it. And just to finish off, a really nice comment there from 8563 Robbie. Well done, guys. You two work well. Oh, well, thank you so much. Right, guys, we'll leave as at that. We will be uploading this live podcast onto Spotify and Apple. It takes a while for the live streams to process, which I don't know if you've seen that on YouTube as well, Benjamin. But sometimes it can be a day, which we found the other day. So what I will do is I'll just link the URL on my Twitter. If you don't follow In Full Swing Podcast on Twitter, please do that, as well as following my own personal account, Connor JH McGilligan. Benjamin, thank you so much, and I will speak to you soon, sir.
Pleasure.
See you, mate.